Hello, everyone. Welcome to the online series teaching forest owners about carbon incentives. This is Module 3, Private Forest Land and Climate Change Mitigation. In today's session, we will dive deeper into carbon baselines and carbon budgets, two key concepts that will help us understand how forest management can play a meaningful role in addressing climate change. I'm Margarita Fernandez, an ecologist and postdoctoral scientist at Penn State University, and I will be guiding you through this module. If we want to quantify how much additional carbon is being stored, we first need to establish a carbon baseline. The baseline is the reference point, is the starting value from which all future carbon changes are measured. Depending on the specific carbon goals of the project, the baseline can be defined in different ways. One approach is to monitor your stand over time, using regular forest inventories to track carbon gains and losses. In the US, we rely on FIA data, the Forest Inventory and Analysis Program, as our national system for monitoring forest carbon stocks. In this context, the baseline is simply the carbon stock at time point 1. And future measurements reflect how much carbon is added or lost over time. This kind of tracking helps landowners understand what's driving carbon changes and identify management strategies to reduce losses or enhance gains. But if the goal is to enhance carbon storage, for example, as part of a carbon crediting program, then the baseline serves a different purpose. In this case, it's known as a counterfactual baseline, a scenario that reflects what would have happened without the intervention. This is often based on a documented management plan that outlines business as usual practices. Here, carbon credits are only awarded for the carbon that is stored above and beyond what would have happened under that baseline scenario. For instance, a forest owner might say, my original plan was to harvest in year X, following the specific prescription, and achieve certain financial silvicultural goals. But deviating from that plan, for example, by delaying harvest or modifying harvest intensity, they can generate additional creditable carbon storage. So, understanding what kind of baseline you're working with, observational versus counterfactual, is essential to determine how additional your carbon outcomes truly are. That original management plan, the one in place before any changes are made, is what we refer as to business as usual condition. To generate additional carbon storage, a landowner must modify that plan in some meaningful way. This might include extending their harvest rotation, implementing invasive species control, or improving pest management. These changes should result in an increase in the total carbon stored in the forest over time. The baseline is essential for comparison. It allows us to ask, what would carbon stocks have looked like at year 5 if we had followed the original management plan? And then compare that to what are the carbon stocks after 5 years on an improved plan? To make these projections, we rely on growth and yield models. These models simulate how forest stands grow over time and under different management scenarios. They draw on inventory data and apply standard allometric equations to estimate annual changes in carbon stocks. Right now, most carbon projects operate under a static baseline. That means that the baseline is fixed at time 0. It doesn't change over time, even if the stand conditions or broader context do. This static approach simplifies accounting but can sometimes limit flexibility in recognizing long-term changes in management or forest dynamics. More recently, there's been a shift towards using dynamic baselines to better account for changes over time. Unlike static baselines, a dynamic baseline approach is more like a quasi-experimental design, where you compare a treatment group, the managed stand, with a control group representing the business as usual scenario. This helps capture a more accurate picture of what actually being gained through improved forest management. So while it may seem like subtle difference, it's important especially regarding carbon credits. If the goal is to demonstrate additionality, proving that extra carbon is being stored because of the intervention, then choosing the right baseline and providing credible evidence is critical. Now we're going to shift gears, moving from more theoretical and conceptual aspects of forest carbon to some real statistics that help us understand what's happening across the United States. Over the past 50 years, forest cover in the US has remained relatively stable, with less than 4% net loss. So what change is happening? It's happening at a much slower rate than in our regions like South America, where deforestation is a major driver of carbon emission losses. That said, forest loss in the US is still a concern, particularly in urbanized areas, where development continues to chip away at forest land. But overall, the pace of forest cover change here is much slower compared to global hotspots. Another key factor in carbon storage is stand density. How many trees are growing per acre? In the US today, more wood is being grown than is lost to mortality or harvesting. In fact, many of our forests are reached or are approaching their biological maximum stand density. That means we're growing denser stands and at the same time harvesting less than we have in the past. You can see in this video on land cover change that a lot of the red areas indicate conversion to more intensive land uses, primarily due to urbanization. This is especially visible in areas experiencing suburban sprawl, where forests and other natural areas are being developed into housing and infrastructure. This trend is particularly noticeable in the southeastern United States, where population growth is accelerating, and in parts of the western US where wildfire plays a major role in shaping land cover dynamics. So while we do see localized change, especially from development and disturbance, overall the US is not losing forest cover at a rapid pace. In fact, we continue to have a large forest base, and the overall number of trees is increasing in many areas. Now takes a look to forests in the context of climate change. Currently, forests offset about 12 to 16% of US carbon emissions, and a big part of that is due to voluntary slowdown in harvesting, both on public and private lands. Many landowners are extending harvesting rotations or choosing not to harvest at all, even without financial incentives. There are several possible reasons for this trend, ranging from stumpage prices to cultural generational shifts in landowner values. This is where social science becomes important, asking questions like, why aren't people harvesting the way they did in the past? What values or circumstances are driving these decisions? Whatever the reasons, the outcome is clear. The slowdown is contributing to increased carbon storage and is providing a real climate benefit by helping to offset a portion of the national emissions. Looking ahead, some climate models predict that parts of the US will experience warmer conditions, and in some cases this could actually enhance carbon storage, especially in regions where increased warmth promotes tree growth. Let's take a look at figure 2. Here you see two different climate models, projecting changes in forest carbon stocks based on different temperature and precipitation scenarios. The key takeaways is that outcomes vary depending on how much wetter or drier specific regions are expected to become. But it's not just about averages. With climate change, we need to pay attention to intensity and timing of events, like the length and severity of droughts or whether rain is concentrating in critical growth periods. Even if total rainfall increases in some areas, harder and drier conditions during key part of the growing season can still negatively affect tree productivity. So in summary, the US still has a large stable forest base. These forests are already offsetting a significant share of emissions, and as the climate shifts, forest carbon dynamics will likely change, but the direction and magnitude of those changes will vary temporally and regionally. That gives us a broad view of the current state and future potential of forest carbon stocks in the US. Let's now break it down in terms of actual carbon quantities using data from the Forest Inventory and Analysis Program of the US Forest Service. On average, family forest lands in the US store about 83 tons of carbon dioxide, equivalent per acre in above ground woody biomass. That's a significant amount of carbon. But keep in mind, this is a national average. If you look at regions like the eastern US and the southeast, those numbers can be twice as high, thanks to denser forests and more productive growing conditions. So while 83 tons per acre is a good reference point, it's just a starting point. Regional variation matters. Every year, these forests also sequester approximately 2 tons of CO2 per acre. Again, just from tree growth, not including soil carbon or below ground biomass. And once again, in the east and southeast, the annual sequestration rate can be double the national average. If you're curious about specifics, Chapter 2 of the reference report provides a state-by-state breakdown of carbon stocks on family forest lands. It's a useful resource to explore how your local conditions compare to national trends. These are the kinds of numbers you can use to get a baseline understanding of carbon storage potential in your forest, especially if you're thinking about inventorying your own forest land or participating in a carbon program. In summary, if you want to speak meaningfully with landowners and clients in your region about forest carbon, there are a few key areas to focus on. First, emphasize the importance of forest health and protection practices. These are critical for maintaining and safeguarding existing carbon stocks and should be promoted in your extension work or education programs. Second, take the time to understand the wood products coming from your client's forest. What's being harvested? Where is it going? And how does it tie into the local economy? These connections are an essential part of the broader carbon story. Finally, encourage conversations around legacy planning and long-term stewardship. These practices not only support sustainable forest management, but also help enhance carbon storage over time on family forest lands. Taken together, these elements form a holistic approach to carbon management, one that may even open the door for landowners to participate in carbon markets if they meet the qualifications for available programs. But today, I have a few questions for you to address with your clients or by yourself. One is, what data is available about the baseline carbon in forests in your region? And another one is, what changes in management can increase carbon stocks in your landowner areas? Now that we have covered some basics about carbon storing for stands, we're ready to move on to the next topic, understanding the value of the carbon, which we'll explore in the next video module. If you're watching this on YouTube, we encourage you to check out our free online educator course for more in-depth content and resources. And if you're already enrolled in the course, just a few quick reminders. Post any questions you have in the Q&A forum on the classroom page. Complete the comprehension check to solidify your learning, and don't forget to fill out the survey if you're seeking credit for this module. Thanks for watching, we hope you enjoy it, and we'll see you in the next lesson.